that's all we want. Have no Forest play. Come join Greg and Richard right here on Talking Red.
Hello and welcome to Talking Reds, a Nottingham Forest podcast hosted by myself, Greg Oram, and of course my podcast partner, Richard Spray. On the panel with us today, it's Rads, and from down under, it's Scott Terry. A disappointing night on Trentside followed the news that Forest are reportedly now on the verge of signing Liam Delap from Chelsea for £45 million. We're going to get straight into that and what Delap could bring to this Forest side before turning our attention to last night. Forest are out of the Carabao Cup after a 2-0 defeat to Leeds United at the City Ground. There were limited opportunities for the Reds, and ultimately Leeds looked the more settled side, while Forest once again looked like a team still learning what Oliver Glasner wants from them. Delap incoming, Forest out of the League Cup, and plenty to talk about. How much should we read into a second defeat to Leeds in 4 days? What went wrong? And how much patience does this new look Forest side need?
If you lose both games against Leeds within 3 days, then we have to accept they were better. Whereas we really were struggling in a few moments today. We made too many mistakes. It was really playing with their pressure, we knew, but we just took many wrong decisions. That's how we gave them their chances and how we gave them their goals. It's just us, it's just we who can change this. And this is what I always do at every single club. We will change things. And I had a really good assessment so far. I know exactly what we have to change. And this is what we will do.
Hello, good morning there. So Oliver Glasner's words speaking to Colin Fray and Forest TV after the match last night. One or two of you joining us in the comments, thank you very much for saying hello. Please do let us know you are here, as we will try and flash bits and pieces up as we go along. It's a very good morning, of course, to Scotty, to Rads and Richard Spray. Let's get straight into it with the news that Liam Delap has agreed to come to Nottingham Forest. The news is broken last night across all social medias. It's when the likes of John Percy and Florian Plettenberg get involved that you really start to think something is happening. What is your initial reaction, guys, on the panel and also in the comments? What's your initial reaction? £45 million. How excited are you by this one? It's a player that we talked about in our recruitment stuff through the summer. It's a player that I've flagged personally for quite a while as being really perfect for Forest. Not just myself, but others as well. Is the price too high for a player who was bought by Chelsea a year ago for just £30 million, and he hasn't exactly had the season of seasons to enhance that price tag? £45 million, Forest fans. Or is that just symptomatic of the seller's market that exists today in world football? When it comes to strikers, they are hard to come by. Richard, what's your initial reaction to Liam Delap coming to Nottingham Forest?
I think initial reaction is just the things that he offers, I think, our squad, which was what we need right now. We need a sort of like a slightly better ball carrying version of Taiwo, right? I mean, we need someone with that same pace, power, and the ability to create matchup challenges for opposing center backs, and he can do that. And he's, like I said, I mean, if you look at his heat map, I'm sure we'll look at some data here shortly. But if you look at it, he's all over, and he does a lot of work throughout the pitch, and he does a lot of work specifically in that box to try to generate opportunities to score. And I think they're banking on the fact, based off of that price point, it is market driven, but it's also driven by what he already did in the Premier League on an Ipswich side that frankly was probably devoid of the kind of talent he certainly saw at Chelsea, which made him be so far down the depth chart. I mean, when you got a João Pedro in there, it's impossible for someone like that to get meaningful minutes probably. So it never seemed like the right fit. Many of us said that. We felt like coming to Forest might be a natural progression for him versus going to Chelsea right away. but there's a lot to like about him. He can be a bit overzealous at times in terms of getting cards unnecessarily and things like that. But I kind of like the energy he brings. And right now, we need a little bit of energy. We need a little bit of positivity to kind of drive us forward. Because obviously, there's we're feeling a little bit down the dumps to a degree. I'm not completely and totally wanting to sell on any particular player or the system at this stage. But I do think he fits the profile what Glasner wants, and he can implement him.
One or two in the comments with us already want to say good afternoon to Rad's dad. He says, here we go again. We should have kept Vitor. If it isn't broke, don't mend it. Pat Brett over in Canada, I think. Pat's in Canada, isn't he? Yes. Says, I'm sorry, guys, but I've been saying this all summer. Our recruitment team are useless. We waste pre-season every year. It frustrated Nuno and it causes us to start behind every year. I think Pat's in Canada. He might be US. If I've got that wrong, apologies.
He's in West Virginia, maybe?
It's West Virginia. Yeah, I think I'm getting mixed up with
Ian.
Ian, that's it, Ian Whittington, another good friend of the show. Nismo says, we have too many attackers. We need to sell 3 or 4. Bring in 1 top quality 10 to be creative with 4 Delap, or he will struggle. Michael Lane, says whoever the striker is will require service. That seems to be lacking in the last couple of matches. And yeah, Pat Brett is the USA. Thanks for that, buddy. All right, okay, so Delap coming in, Scott. Big striker, fits the profile. Reported in The Athletic today that he was a target for Forest a year ago, which I think we knew, a massive target for Oliver Glasner a year ago, and they're reporting that he nearly joined Palace, but when Chelsea made their feelings clear, it was the London club he went for, or rather the West London club he went for. And so now it looks like Glasner's finally got his man. Good news for you, do you think?
Well, look, I think after you've seen those 2 games against Leeds, you can sort of immediately get an understanding as to why Forest want him. Look, I don't think we can think of him as just simply another Chris Wood. He's a younger guy, obviously. He's more mobile. He's aggressive. I think you mentioned it in your introduction, Greg, around the price bracket that he's coming in for. That is, that would be a club record for us. So, he isn't just coming in just as a promising youngster. We are seeing him as almost like a solution almost, to some of our attacking problems. It changes the expectation for me. Club record, 45 minutes, that is a lot of money. I do agree with your comment around this is a seller's market, and thus we are paying big money for these 4 players. Man City have bought Savinho as well Tottenham have bought Savinho from Man City as well. So you're seeing big price tags for players. But we do need someone. We do need a striker, and we're getting closer and closer to the end of the end of the signing season. So, I'm always glass half full. I really think he can make a difference for us. My only concern is, I guess, his form at Chelsea wasn't great. What did he score? 1 goal? Yeah, I think 1 goal. What else? He was at Chelsea.
Should we read too much into that? I mean, a lot of players go to Chelsea and struggle. He went there from Maresca because he knew him at Man City. That obviously changed mid-season. He had an injury early on. Do you put too much weight on the Chelsea experience?
I don't think so, because as you say, you see a lot of players that go to Chelsea and they really struggle. In terms of game time, I was talking to a Chelsea mate over here in Australia, and he was saying that I made an assumption that Delap hadn't actually got a lot of game time, but he actually said that he did actually get some minutes with Chelsea, and yet he'd still only scored that 1 goal. So a little bit of a concern, but look, I think put him in the right environment. Glasner, the environment that Forest are in, I think we can sort of turn Delap into a high scoring player, which we saw more when he was in his Ipswich days as opposed to what we saw when he was playing for Chelsea. But yeah, look, glass half full, right? He's a young guy. I think he can be moulded, and we can use him in the formation which Glasner wants to sort of play. So yeah, look, I think big money. Hopefully, he can turn that big money into goals.
A year ago, when he was leaving Ipswich, Rads, he was a player that I really wanted us to sign because I thought he would enhance us. And now it looks like we have got him. It's still not done and dusted yet, but the medicals today, we believe. So, it's going to be Delap in a Forest shirt. What does he bring, Rads, to this Forest squad that we currently perhaps don't have now?
I think, I think it should be a good signing. And I think it's something that Forest really need, because striker's been an issue for us for quite a while. Obviously, Chris Wood's been fantastic for us, but I think we've seen in these first 2 games he's not quite what he was after that injury. He's only getting older. Igor Jesus isn't consistent enough in the Premier League, or at least it wasn't last season. And I think we needed that target man up front, that guy that we can get the ball to, which I think in itself is a problem, because we seem to struggle to find the attackers in these first 2 games with any sort of consistency. So that's another thing we've got to consider, is making sure that we can make the attack work with the rest of the team. I think, you can bring in a really good striker, but we need to make the rest of the team work. But
one thing on that, Dave, is that
yes.
James McAtee played with him at the under-23s for Man City, and no other player has assisted Liam Delap, not Rory Delap, Liam Delap, I nearly did it, has assisted Liam Delap more than James McAtee. That's 10 assists.
Yeah.
So with McAtee now looking like he is Glasner's man and them knowing each other, does that give you pause for being positive?
I think that's potentially a reason why we want to sign him, as well as Amari Hutchinson. They played together with England, the 3 of them.
And
Ipswich. And Ipswich, of course. So bringing those together, and of course they got relegated, but they were probably the brightest sparks in that team. Delap, I don't really want to judge him off Chelsea, because yes, he didn't do very well there, but a lot of strikers go to Chelsea and struggle. I think we've seen it happen many times. It's like the number 9 shirt at Chelsea is a bit cursed, and it just doesn't seem to ever happen for them. Well, Ipswich, they were a worse team than what we are, and obviously Chelsea, but he was very good for them. And I remember before he joined Chelsea, I do remember him being linked with Palace and Glasner wanting him there. And I think all of us at one point were like, that would have been a really good signing for Forest. So I think just a year at Chelsea where he hasn't been like ripping it up, which I don't think anyone thought he would. Don't really think it should hinder it too much. I know it's quite a big price tag for somebody who's not particularly performed. But I think, like you said earlier, maybe that's just the market nowadays. English players tend to cost more than other players in this country. The market's just inflated anyway. So if you want to get these players, especially later in the window, you've got to go big. So it's a big fee. People, I think, will be a bit judgmental on him, but I personally think it should be a good signing. It's what we need. We need more players, I think, but. Like you say, hopefully McAtee and players like that, Gibbs White, linking up with Hutchinson, hopefully this can help Delap settle in and can hit the ground running with us.
And when it comes to the fee, £45 million is a lot. There was talk it was going to be a loan option. Dave, I'll just stick with you for a moment, David. Would you have been happier with a loan, or do you think, actually, you know what? It's 45 million quid. It's a bit toppy, but he's our player and it gets him in. And actually, maybe the buy-in from the player is much bigger rather than it being a loan.
Yeah, I think you want to ideally sign permanent players. You don't want to have that worry. Like Forest have done many times in recent seasons of how do you replace that player when the season's over. If they're permanently here, then you can probably be sure that they're going to be committed to the club, whereas a loan, it's like, well, I can always be recalled or sent back. I think we saw with like Douglas Luiz and Zinchenko, they were short term, and I'm not saying that's why they didn't perform, but maybe it played a part. So loan, it would have maybe been lower risk financially, of course, because we wouldn't have had to have, potentially blown a lot of money on somebody that maybe doesn't perform, but I'd rather have that permanent player in through the door, really, so we don't have to worry about it long term.
Yeah,
of course, I guess you could say it's more of a gamble, but I think it's more of a long term option for us.
Yeah, I agree. I'm with you. I would prefer the permanent signing. Scott, what about you on that? I mean, does the price matter to you? I mean, obviously we want to try and get players at good value, but if it's 45 million quid and it gets us the player that Oliver Glasner clearly wants, because he wanted Diamande, he was chasing him at Palace, and he's got him now at Forest. He wanted Liam Delap at Palace, like a few other clubs did, including us. He's now got him at Forest. He's being backed by Mr. Marinakis. There's significant fees being paid. Do you put too much kind of thought into that? You think, you know what, if it is what it is, it has to be 45 million, then so be it.
I do think it changes the expectation. I think, it's not just, he's a promising youngster that's coming in to learn, and learn his sort of trade behind wood. We are spending a club record fee, and therefore, we are going to be asking the question, is Delap going to be the striker who can turn our attacking moves into goals? It's a lot of money in it. I do, I think Chelsea signed him for, was it 30, 35? It was about 30. That amount of money.
It was a release clause. It was a release clause, yeah. And
then is it a year later? And we're looking to sign him, and we're paying 15 million quid more, and he's only scored one goal. And but to answer your question, I do think it's a lot of money. It is a lot of money, but I think to answer your question, I think I would rather take him, actually sign him rather than take him on loan. I think because, as you've described there, it kind of gives him skin in the game. He's now part of the Forest project. It's not necessary that he can come in, try his best, maybe on loan, and then maybe he's always got the option to go back to Chelsea at the end of the season. He's now a Forest player. He's staying with us. He's on that contract, and thus he feels bought into the Forest project. He will be there. And he's going to, he's going to be one of our key striking options throughout the season.
Yeah, I mean, he fits into the profile of what Oliver Glasner is going to want from a striker, Richard. I mean, in terms he's very mobile. He's a big player in terms of height and size, but he is mobile as well. And you put together once again the wagon wheel and the other data points on Liam Delap. So if you can just take us through what we might expect from him, what we've seen from him, and obviously his game time at Chelsea's been limited in places. So what can you tell us in a bit more detail, Richard?
Yeah, in terms of looking at him comparison to Chris Wood, and we compared him to his 24-25 season, which makes the most sense, right? Because that's the season we all remember from Chris Wood, where he was absolutely incredible and his conversion rate was ridiculous. He had an XG of 13.35, but got 20 goals in that season, which is unbelievable. But yeah, he kind of has a slightly different profile in that he's, his offensive dueling, meaning in terms of just his aggressiveness, and he's very good in the press as well. He's not like straight line super fast, but he's got significantly more pace, I think, than what we currently carry on the squad. And it's just the way he approaches what he does in transition. We need someone, because we know with Glasner, when we get the ball back, the whole concept behind the counter press is as soon as you get the ball, you win the ball back, you want to go and shift into attack immediately. And so he's the kind of player I think who can do that. There may be some moves last night that we saw from Woody, who I still love the man, but you think of that he played the ball through the legs of the defender, and he just couldn't catch up to it in order to do anything with it. And I think that's the kind of move potentially where Delap finishes that off, whereas Woody right now in his stage in his career doesn't. And that's not to cast aspersions at Woody, but this player, I think, successful dribble percentage is 52% compared to Woody's 33%. Right. And one of his primary strengths is physical and aggressive with powerful ball carrying. And we need that. We just don't have that dynamic in our strikers right now. Even when you put Igor at the 9, while he can do some other things, because his aerial duel ability is actually pretty solid, and Delap's is actually better than Chris Wood's as well, in that sense, for a guy who's Chris Wood 2 or 3 inches taller than him. But I think he just offers certain traits and different attributes that we just don't possess right now, and they seem to fit within that sort of mobile, physical, and decent finisher that we know Glasner's going to covet for the way that he operates in that system. But yeah, I think he doesn't possess the same conversion rate, but I think he's got some very talented players around him. I know chance creation is a question mark right now just from the first 2 matches, but I attribute that more to the system and the acclimation than I think to lack of ability in certain players that we're fielding at the given moment. So there's a lot that I think we can provide Liam Delap, and I do think he can create more on his own than what we see from our current strikers, versus being codependent on everything that happens behind him.
he's got to come in as the starter. Surely he's got to be the main man. I mean, for me, Chris Wood's going to be the bench option. There may be some rotation, obviously, and it gets starts here and there. But I think you got to bring Liam Delap in. You've got to put faith in him from the off. I think he's only 23 years old still, so he's still really young. Really, we got to have faith and we got to have that patience for this player. One or two of you in the comments are talking about this as well. Sharma's with us from Nairobi in Kenya. Says I've been a long admirer of Delap and I'm glad that we finally got him. It's all the right attributes to work in the Glasner system. Not too much bothered about the fee. Says it's exciting. Pat's wondering, are we paying an Anderson tax? Possibly, but I think English player tax comes into play as well. And hello to Anna, who's in the comments. Good afternoon to you. She says, I was at the game last night and not sure I feel talking Forest. We are a total mess, or we were a total mess. Were we a total mess? I mean, look, we're going to talk about reactions and where we're at through this episode, through this pod. We're going to talk about, are people going a little bit overboard? It's been just 2 games. Are you feeling a bit of PTSD, Forest fans, from last year? You know, 1 or 2, I mean, Angie's name is being invoked on social media and other places, which I think is absolutely a load of rubbish, to be honest with you. I don't even know why you're doing that. We knew that Oliver Glasner's coming in, and he's coming in with a certain style. It is now the Oliver Glasner project. And so you can't expect it to happen so quickly. He talked about it in his interview. We were a bottom of the table team last year, battling relegation. You can't read too much into Europe because the Premier League teams always tend to go deep in these competitions now. The sort of 3rd and 4th and 5th teams in leagues across Europe tend to be worse than most of the Premier League. So when you look at the Premier League last year, you know, we were struggling, and for whatever reason, all the managers and all the change, etc., this is still the 5th manager in 12 months. So there has to be time allowed for him to really get under the skin of these players and get them performing. And we'll talk more about Glasner and his past a bit later on. Rich is going to give us a little bit on maybe what Glasner's done at other clubs as well. And this isn't about happy clapping, you know. So if people are always saying, oh, it's happy clapping, it's not. But I'm just trying to give you a balanced view that, look, we are at the start of a project. And I said this to Richard off air, I'm going to chuck this in now. The only reason why we lost 2 games to Leeds is individual errors. We were the better team in the second half on Saturday, and we lost it at the end. Milenkovic goes diving in, takes out their player stupidly. That's an error. And then Matt Sells and the wall, also more errors. There's the goal. Last night, dodgy back header for their first that wasn't picked up. And then a catalogue of mistakes and fouls and not dealing with throw-ins at the second goal. You know, yes, Leeds were the better team last night. So before the Leeds fans come wading in, yes, you were the better team last night. I'll say that. I didn't think so last Saturday. I thought it was pretty balanced and 0-0 was fair. But last night, I thought actually Leeds were the better team on the night, and they looked like they had progressed with their system, and they're going to be absolutely fine. Fair play to Leeds. They're going to be fine. They might even be challenging for Europe this season. So that's what I'll say. We're still finding ourselves, and it's that word that I've spoken about loads, Forest fans. It's identity. We did have a bit of an identity finally under Vitor Pereira at the end of last season because he's a good character and he aligned with the Nuno vibe that happened. But we've got to get past that. We've got to get past the names of Steve Cooper, the names of Nuno. Don't bring up Ange. Dyche is getting mentioned. We've got to get past that, and we've got to now look at this elite level manager coming into Nottingham Forest, being given the time to implement his principles and his strategies. So patience is what's needed. And Liam Delap, Usman Diomande, big signings, as well as Schlager coming in, who knows him. Okay, we're going to talk about some of the players and last night's performance in a bit more detail as we go through. And Schlager will probably get mentioned as well. So look, all I'm saying is let's just look at the game in isolation. We can react to the game and we're all pissed off about the game, but let's look at the bigger picture as well. Yes, okay, it hasn't been great the first 2 games, but there's the bigger picture at play, and that's what we need to remember. Okay, there's my little unexpected kind of like monologue over. Delane Bakwa has gone to Lille on loan. I think that's more or less finalised. Eric Da Silva Moreira, he's gone on loan to Excelsior. One player that's been mentioned and looks like it could be happening to come in as a right wing back is Celta's Javi Rueda. Now then, I've got a little bit of information. So you got my voice for a bit longer. I'm sorry. He's 24 years old. He's Spanish. He's at Celta Vigo. Right-footed, around 5'10". He can play as a right back, but he is a right wing back. That is his most natural role. He's a former Real Madrid academy player, guys. Now, he has established himself at La Liga level. Very, very much a modern front foot wing back. What stands out for him is that he's quick. He's got genuine pace down the right, and also he's got an excellent engine, capable of repeatedly getting up and down the flank, something that Munoz was doing at Palace and something that Glasner's going to want from his right wing back, and something that's been flagged up that the concerns about Ola Aina at the moment, who we love, but getting up and down that flank, this guy can do it. He's very good at attacking the space in front of him. He loves the overlap and getting beyond the play in front. He regularly gets himself into useful positions in the final third. Another key attribute for the wing-backs in this system. Arriving at the back post and being players that score goals. That's what he does. He will provide the natural width that Glasner wants from his wing-backs. He can contribute goals, assists, rather than simply being just a defensive outlet. He's very comfortable receiving high up the pitch, plays aggressively. Okay, so defending is not his outstanding quality. So bear that in mind, but this can still be improved. He's got to maybe look at his one-on-one defensive work a little bit. He's not particularly dominant aerially at 5'10". And, you know, crossing can be dangerous, but he does need greater consistency with that. So his balls into the box need to maybe sharpen up a little bit in places. He's more effective attacking space than being asked to dictate possession. So he'll be looking for balls played onto him and running in. So in a conventional back four, we might have more questions about him defensively, but why he fits Glasner, that's the important bit. Glasner would not want him to play as a traditional right back. A three-man defence gives Rueda the licence to start higher and attack. He's got the athleticism to provide the entire right-sided width. He suits a system asking the wing-back to be aggressive, vertical, and repeatedly getting beyond the ball. And at 24, you're getting someone who can contribute immediately, but still has room to develop in him. He's a good player. I would say overall, for suitability, this is like an 8.5 out of 10 signing, okay? He's got things he needs to move on. His engine's elite. His pace is really good. His attacking movement's good. We talked about the defending. He's a right wing back. That's what we need. Don't judge Javi Rueda as a right back. Judge him as a Glasner wing back. And once you do that, the profile makes a lot more sense as well. All right? So that's the kind of information I've got on this guy. Time is moving away from us. Just going to come to you, Rads. I mean, I've just laid out to him. Does he sound just the right cup of tea for us?
Yeah, I think so. I think the wing backs have been getting a lot of attention because obviously they've got a very different role to a fullback, of course. And Nico playing on the wrong side, I think sometimes can hinder him because he's always having to like turn to cross the ball and it doesn't always work. I think Ola doesn't necessarily suit being a wing back all the time. So we do need somebody a bit like what Luke Annette says that's more able to get forward quickly and attack, but can also defend. And yeah, I think it's clear that we've been wanting somebody like that. We've been linked with obviously Munoz and Reed from Feyenoord as well earlier in the window. Obviously now this guy from Celta Vigo. So yeah, I think it's clear that this is a Nottingham Forest really want to get over the line. And I think it can only benefit us, you know, strengthening that area of the team. Because if it's going to be how we play, then I think we've got to, you know, not necessarily criticise the manager, but you've got to get the right players to fit his system as well.
That player we just talked about, Javi Rueda, I don't expect many of you to know too much about him. You know, I've had to look him up and put together what I just kind of described to you, but it was really positive, Scott. You know, the right wing back area looks like it needs reinforcing. If it's this guy, based on what we've just talked about, could you be excited about him?
I think so, yeah. I mean, based on the stats that you just showed up there, and yeah, look, I'd not heard of him until that link was made. I think Rad has just hit the nail on the head there. You know, like Glasner is trying to bring in a different formation, a different style of footy to what we've seen previously. You know, three at the back, and we need those wing backs. We need those quality players playing on the wings in that slightly different role. And so, we need, we've been linked with a couple of different wing backs, but if this guy fits the bill, then absolutely, let's get him in. Defensively, I think you mentioned defensively, he might not be the sharpest, but I think that's the reason we've got three central defenders at the back, mopping up after them. So I think attacking-minded wing backs, I think will fit into Glasner's system. So if this guy fits the profile, and it sounds like he does, then absolutely, let's get him in. Let's see what he can do for us.
It's the outlet, Richard, for the striker. For Liam Delap coming in, it's he's going to thrive from crosses into the box. And we talked about Javi Rueda needing to maybe be a bit better with that, but he looks like an explosive player down the flank. Is it someone who you think could suit us?
Yeah, and it's similar to what we were talking about with Liam Delap in the sense that he provides aspects of his game that I think suits what we need right now. We don't currently have, including that raw pace. You know what I mean? Is it Elanga level? But not many people are. So I think it's not quite to that level. But look at Munoz, even in his 30s now, he's still very quick. He's still very dynamic, and he's box crashing, and he provides those assist numbers, and he provides opportunities. I think that not that Ola is not doing any of that, but I just think it's the sustainability of it throughout an entire match where we need it from front to back. And I think that's the problem with Ola, right? It's just the inability, I think, to carry that forward through the entire match. And so I think by having that little element of dynamism to that right side, I think will be something that maybe elevates things a little bit. But as we said with these other players that have already been there for the entire preseason, you're going to need some time to see him bed in as well. And so I don't think we want to assume that Rueda is just going to hit the ground running. But I think what he does offer is just something clearly missing, I think, from that right side. As much as I think all is quick, he's good on the ball. He can put a cross in at times. It's just not consistent enough throughout the entire 90 minutes for us to really be effective.
We need the depth. We need the profile to be right. And Glasner's talked about bringing two players in. I wonder how much of that is just bluff. Two players in public doesn't mean two players in reality. It could be that if he's talking about, I want to bring 5 players in, then the price gets put up because players and clubs know that you want more players. So they're working clearly in different areas, and there's lots more links coming up now. And it may well be, guys, that it's not going to be Javi Rueda, who we've just talked about and just given a good profile on it. It's going to be someone who fits in the same way, I would imagine. But it looks like it's progressing. The talk is that there's a deal to be had, and they're working on negotiations at the moment. One more bit of breaking news. Jota Silva, currently on loan at Olympiacos. It now looks like that is going to be made permanent this window. No news on the fee, but that's on X at the moment. It looks like the move to Olympiacos is going to be converted into a perm. So hopefully that will bring in some revenue as well. Okay, we are here talking about the latest state of play at Forest. Recruitment's been the first half. We are going to talk about last night's match in the second. Back very soon. Before we get into talking about last night's game, I want to lift your spirits a little bit. At the weekend, our really good friend and sponsor of this channel, Stu Freestone, the cheese trader, revealed his new spoken word poem, Paint the Town Red, which he's been working on for months and months. And it's been on social media, it's been on YouTube, it's been everywhere. It was in the Trent Nav. And I'm sure that you've all heard it and you've all seen it. But if you haven't, we're going to play it now for you. So if you're on screen, you can see the film. If you're listening, you'll be able to hear the magic of the words. It should be hopefully something to just cheer you up a little bit after last night.
On the banks of the Trent is our church, where history blossoms from hallowed turf. We've been graced by the greats. Rich history flows in our blood like the glad rags and the lace flags this dear city is known for. Red runs through our roots. We've earned the labour of our fruits, beneath the shadowed major oaks of glory years and downward slopes. Still the passion billows through the river in swathes of surging hope. We are the salt of the earth. The days of old speak of what we're worth. The sun glistens upon our river, shimmering with every flow of its relentless current. The rise and fall and rise again, like a phoenix emerging from the ashes, emboldened in its fiery history. Overlooked by Lady Bay, our balcony of breathtaking greatness, straddling the southern banks of the city, is a view that lasts indefinitely. For we gleam like gold under evening floodlights, all character, ambition and mentality, with an anthem that roars like the lions in our square as the mist pours from the Trent and rises through our streets vibrantly. This is the true home of a prophet who planted all the seeds and watched them grow into a forest. We are a club that's created its own dynasty. Rolling back the years to that famous green jumper, he achieved more than most ever will. But we've been there. We've felt it. The ups and the downs. We've been down on the rocks and found the grit and the drive of what it takes to get off. We've worked for this. We've earned and deserve every inch of it. So now we flourish like the forest in our name, incandescent fireworks of colourful bright light, adorned by our two shimmering stars atop our sacred crest, embracing our motto, virtue outlives death. This is a city that believes in miracles. We are stalwarts of a revolution in red shirts. This is not just any club. It is blood and it is bone. A fortress built where legends roam through clattering seats and scarves held high. It's a war cry we've roared since 1865. The Trent waters whisper tales of old, Cloughie's magic. Fearless and bold, we stand as one. A sea of red. We are Forest, born then bred, and our legacy is magic, on the pitch and off. I hope anybody's not stupid enough to write us off.
Unbelievable.
Goosebumps.
Sensational.
Yeah, it's a fantastic piece. It really, really is. And I know that everyone will join me in thanking Stu for that, because it's showing our history. It's talking at length about who we are and what we are and what we want to be and so on. And so absolutely fantastic, Stu. Brilliant. You're an artist, you're a poet, you're a legend. And I think everyone would agree that is a stunning film. Deserves to be played before the match, in my opinion, up on the big screen in the ground, right before the Johnny Owen film. I think it's worthy of that. And I know that Ryan Yates has seen it. I know that other players perhaps have seen it as well. So absolutely fantastic, Stu. Well done to you. Okay, right. I want to get into last night's game. I want all of you to think about what you saw, how you felt coming out of that game. I'll come to you first, David. What was your overriding feeling watching that performance, and how did you feel after?
I was just very disappointed, really, and frustrated. I don't want to be like really dramatic and say it's season defining. It's going to be relegation and everything. I think it's way too early to say stuff like that. But I was just more frustrated that. I think Glasner can be a great manager, but I'm one of these people that's like, I do feel sorry for Vitor Pereira, because like he did a good job ultimately. And if Glasner doesn't hit the ground running, it's like, I'm going to have a few doubts here or there. Not saying that Glasner can't do it. He's a proven manager that needs time. And I've seen that it took him a while to bed in at Palace and at Frankfurt, So I think we need to take that into consideration. But it's just frustrating that I think we ended last season in quite a good mood, and now we've kind of started this season in a bit of a negative way again. 2 losses in a row, where I don't think it was all bad, especially the first game against Leeds. But then also the fact we need a few more players to come for the door, and we haven't really got that long left to do it. And I think there were some good things, particularly in the league game against Leeds. But even then, I think it was a bit disjointed. I think we struggled to keep the ball. We struggled to create. I think we struggled across the pitch, to be honest. If we did try and do good things, it never quite, we never quite managed to pull it off. So it was one of frustration. I didn't boo or anything at the end. I know some fans did, but I just want to see a bit of stability, to be honest. That's what I want to see from the club. And I think that's probably why we wanted to get Oliver Glasner, to try and have somebody long term. Because I guess if you look at Vitor's track record, he's been at like 14 clubs. Maybe we thought, let's jump the gun before it doesn't work. So I get that. Maybe Oliver Glasner can be a longer appointment, and if it does work, then absolutely, it's a very good decision. But for now, I think we've got to be patient. But it's going to be difficult as well to see Forest losing in the way we're losing, not even scoring goals at the moment, conceding pretty poor goals. But I've seen other people say, maybe you need to have some short-term pain for long-term success, and I hope that's the case. But with all the upheaval we've had in the last year, it does feel quite frustrating, to be at kind of at that point again of like, where do we go from here? Is this going to work? And people like having such mixed opinions on the manager and the players, and saying we need like 10 new signings, which I don't think's true. But I just want a bit of stability this season, and it's not the start to the season that I think we would have wanted if that's what we're aiming for. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
Two games, Scotty. I mean, we played Leeds twice. And so when you play pre-season against mostly European opposition, it goes back to what I was saying before. And Oliver Glasner even touched it as well. When you're playing in Europe, you're kind of rolling teams over because the standard's not there. And we did the same in pre-season again. We were like beating foreign sides. But the intensity of the Premier League and English football goes up a level when it really matters. And so we've seen that against Leeds both games. We had limited opportunities last night. Woody had a great strike on goal, really good save from James Trafford. I mean, what's that down overall in your eyes to the individuals, the system, or is it simply that Leeds are further along as a team than what we are?
Yeah, look, it was a tough watch. It was a 5 a.m. kickoff here over in Australia, so it was an early one. I don't think we weren't awful, but I think Rads just used the word disappointing, and I think I thought disappointing. It sums it up really. But there's an important distinction there between being awful and being disappointing. I don't think Leeds really came to the City ground and blew us away. But at the same time, I don't think we really sort of showed how we can hurt Leeds. I never really felt like there was much in there for us in terms of how we could hurt them and take opportunities against them, because we did have opportunities, but I kind of felt as if there was the threat, the invention, and sort of intensity, and I just kind of never really saw sort of too much of that. And ultimately, when you think about losing twice in 4 days to the same team, what was it, 3-0? 3-0 on aggregate. We conceded 3, but we didn't score any. The worrying thing for me is our ability to look threatening, to score goals. And whilst we had some opportunities, they weren't particularly great opportunities. I think for me, it's really just around the attack. And if I remember to the back end of last season when we were having Woody and Jesus together up top, and then Morgan behind them, we didn't have that in this game, and we've not seen that sort of those three. That was when I felt as if we were playing and we were looked our best in the attacking third. Obviously, we've talked around Delap and we've talked around how Wood maybe doesn't look quite as sharp as what he has done last season. So it's all around that attacking intent. I think for me, it's whether we can get back to that final third, that sharpness, the intensity, and the attacking intent in that final third.
The goals were, as I've mentioned before, Richard, down to individual errors again last night. I mean, Kalimawindo's header played back. I mean, it's still enough up the pitch for it to possibly have been dealt with. And then, of course, I want to kind of tie both goals together. We saw the calamity of the second goal with the throw-in. I mean, Jed Cunha dived in, in a similar way to what Milenkovic did the weekend, needlessly diving in, giving a free kick away. And it just keeps you in your own final third, defensive third, and keeps the pressure on you because Leeds have got good players. When they made their changes after we'd made ours, they countered what we'd done. When we made the changes, we started to get a bit more joy. But then they brought some players in and just kind of took control of the game and really kind of put any fizz we'd had out of action. So are you concerned, Richard, about those individual errors again popping up? Or is this, again, just symptomatic of new system, new ideas, bit of nervousness, that kind of thing?
I'm sure there's some elements that you could say are basic fundamental principles of playing football that any professional footballer, as long as these guys have been playing the game, should be able to execute. But I think I come back to an analogy in my own work life. If I run a team, which I do, at one point I ran a team of 200 people. If I run those teams and all of a sudden a third of those people are all doing the same things incorrectly, that's not about individual errors. That's about something, a thread of something, a trend of something not functioning as intended. And so it's incumbent upon me as a leader, right? I mean, to be able to isolate that and be able to correct it. To his point, these are the words that Glasner is using, right? I'm seeing what I know I need to change, and I'm going to change it. Do you get my point? So I think at some point we got to let the professional in the room be able to tell us what's going on. It's not just coach speak in my mind. He seems very like his personality, and just when you go back and watch what he says, to me, he's very intentional with what he says. And I think he's probably the same way in the dressing room, and he's probably the same way on the training ground. So I think at some point we do need to realize that footballers make errors, right? I mean, it happens. But when we're not winning and when it doesn't look like we want it to look and what we expected it to look, then everything becomes a problem, and it becomes this thing that we have to, try to isolate and bring to the surface and try to, well, we don't have the midfielders, we don't have this, we don't have that, we need to bring in more players, et cetera, et cetera. I think we're always trying to kind of solve the equation, as it were. But in reality, it comes down to, I think, what David's saying right here, because I completely and fundamentally agree with this. When you're not understanding your role to the level you want to, and you're trying to implement these types of this type of precision and this type of space management and this type of way of functioning as a team, as well as your individual role, like I mentioned, you're going to see disruption to the way that your mind processes things, and it doesn't process it the same rate, and it doesn't process it in the same way as it once did. And so you're caught between two different sort of modes of thinking, and I think that can create challenges for players. Anytime a system is turned over, and it's not just about the formation, it's about what you're asking of these players, it's gonna create disruption, and I think it's gonna take time for that sort of the ability to be instinctual as opposed to thinking through it, too much. And I think that there's validity to that. And like I said, when you start to see that permeate all areas of the pitch, to David's point about the whole thing looking a little bit off and out of sync, right, and disjointed, invariably to me that speaks to a system adaptation versus individual poor quality and ability, and because we've seen these guys execute and play at a high level at other points. So it's I don't know. Maybe I'm living on hopium here, but I do believe that there's absolute credence to that. And what we saw the last two matches, to me, was, to your point, a contrast of one team who's already taken this journey and another contrast of a team who's just starting the journey. And while we say that there's a preseason, I mean, look at the Nuno scenario. He had a half of a season, or close to over half of the season plus a preseason to implement everything he wanted and get the culture where he wanted it and get the football on the pitch where he wanted it, right? And a lot of those same players are still here. It's not like they can't do it. So I think we're getting very caught up in what's happening right now and not enough in what we think. And we need to lower our expectations, I guess is my point, and recognize, even in his history, it's taken roughly 5 to 10 matches for all of this start to show fruits, right? And that's been consistent with him. And so if we're wanting evidence, then go back to that. And then the end result is cup wins and finishing pretty well in the table. So I just think we have to be careful about becoming too punitive too quickly and just assuming all of these things when in reality we haven't given it a chance to truly come to fruition.
Yeah, and we're going to come to a bit more of that in just a moment. Sticking with last night's game, so we saw players coming in. We made 5 changes. No Gibbs White, and obviously he is a massive creative spark for us. And we're talking about chance creation and opportunity. It was a bit limited last night. The midfield pairing was interesting of Schlager with Dominguez, who in my mind are both two similar players to kind of play together. There was, Pat Brett in the comments is going to have a heart attack because he's just typing away constantly about the midfield like he always does. But bless him, he's probably got a point. Maybe the midfield needs to really be to have the spotlight on it when there's no James McAtee playing, who is now being labelled as the creative force, the one that's going to unlock. If there's no James McAtee in there, who else is going to play in there if he's not playing? I know that it was a cup game, which is why the changes were made. And so he wanted to rotate and so on. So we've now got a long period of time where it's just going to be league games. So you'd like to think, or I'd like to think, that if James McAtee is the man, that he's going to be the guy that gets the spot. It might be that you see McAtee paired with a Schlager. Sangare and he have still got, we talked about this post-match the other day, they've still got to develop some synergy. And so that pairing will probably still get an outing on the weekend. We'll have to wait and see. But going back to last night, David, what did you make of Schlager? He got quite a bit of flack on social media. He runs around a lot, doesn't he?
Yeah, I've seen people be pretty brutal on him on social media, but I guess that's going to happen. I don't think we should write him off because he's only had one start in a competitive game. I don't think anyone, to be honest, really stood out yesterday. Honestly, the biggest thing I can say about him is I didn't really notice him at times. Probably isn't a good thing. I know you can also say that's a good thing because it means they're just going about their business, but it can also mean they were just a passenger in the game as well. And I think he probably was. I mean, I think he was partly at fault for the first goal because I think Calamanda was trying to head the ball towards him and he never received it. Just a little bit clumsy with his passing. But to be fair, like we've said, the whole team has struggled to keep the ball and pass the ball properly. It's just been very disjointed. And yeah, I don't think we can be too harsh on Schlager after one start. I've seen some say, well, this is why he was a free agent, which I don't know how true that is, but I think he's been signed probably because he knows Oliver Glasner from Wolfsburg, and he is, kind of like we say, a similar sort of player to Dominguez. Maybe it could work, but the Premier League is very different to the Bundesliga. It's obviously a much more physical and faster pace. So some players find it hard to adapt to that. So maybe it's going to take Schlager some time. But I do have faith that he can be a good player for us. I hope he doesn't end up being a bit of a flop because I was pretty excited when we signed him. I thought that's a really, really good bit of business. And as a bonus, it was free. But yeah, it wasn't his greatest game. Not that I don't think any of us would have seen him loads, but we saw him pre-season. To be fair, he had a couple of good games, but obviously they're non-competitive, so I don't think we can really take that too serious. But yeah, I'm still trying to keep the faith with Schlager and not all the players that they can try and turn this around.
Again, it's so early. I mean, it literally is so early. The season has just started, and these players are still acclimatising, Scott. And one player who got his first start last night was Ousmane Diomande, the big signing at centre-back who we all are excited about, is come in. And what did you make of his performance? I mean, I'll say I thought he looked a little bit of a yard off it last night and still needs to, get get maybe some fitness up and also some understanding. What did you make of him?
Yeah, look, I agree with what you're saying, Greg. I don't think he didn't look quite at the races. Really, there were a few moments where he didn't look quite on it. But you just mentioned it. Raz just mentioned it. This is us. Second game, one Premier League game. This is one cup game into the season. I think we just have to. We've really got to sort of temper expectations. I don't think we should be too critical about the team, the squad. I think, Glasner is still working out exactly what is his best 11. All right. I mean, you talked around Schlager in midfield. We've talked around, is McAtee now being seen as that sort of player that can play a bit deeper and pass the ball around a little bit. Similar with Diamande as well. I mean, everyone just assumed. I mean, I've posted stuff on the Australia site around where we're going to have the centre back trio will be, Murillo, Milenkovic, and Diamande. But of course, Cunha's been playing. Cunha played in the first game against Leeds. We just got to sort of cool our jets a little bit. He's still trying to work out his best team. That's both in defence. That's all positions. That's defence. That's midfield. That's up front as well. Who are the best players to start in our best starting 11? And this isn't just going to turn up in the next game against Liverpool on Saturday. This is going to take a period of time for him to work it out. I think we just have to be patient. I do not want to go back to the chaos of last season where we had 4 managers, in one season, because that was just crazy. I think we've got to buy into Glasner, buy into his methods, his system, support him, support the players. I think whoever he picks, we've got to give them that support. But I think we've got to, as you're saying, we're 2 games in. 2 games, it's nothing. It's 2 games in, and we're already picking
against the same team.
Exactly, against the same team. A team that likes to sit in deep as well. When we play, and this is what we talked around last season as well. When we play against teams that want to sit in deep, we struggle to break them down. Potentially against Liverpool, and I know we'll probably come to that in a minute. But potentially against teams that are going to come onto us, we will do better because there'll be more space in there as well. But look, we can't get too down. It's disappointing. Absolutely, it's disappointing. But we cannot get too down on a couple of losses. This is a long-term project. We've got to keep the faith, stick by the team, stick by the manager. Come on, you Reds. We've got to. Let's not make sort of rash decisions here. Let's keep going.
Hello, Forest fans. Welcome to Talking Reds. We're so glad you're here. Please like and subscribe. It really helps us out. Thanks for listening and watching. You Reds!
Anything you can do to help us along is gratefully appreciated. The Athletic are now reporting that Forest are in advanced talks with Celta Vigo for Javi Rueda. So Daniel Taylor and his colleague Mario Cortegana just published an article on that. Paul Taylor's given a bit of in-depth knowledge on him as well. If you've got the Athletic subscription, go and read it. It just kind of supports what we've been saying. He looks like the primary target and is looking more likely now than not, looking at personal terms with the player. So still a bit of work to do, but looking like we could be securing the right wing-back target we all need. Now then, Oliver Glasner has made it clear that implementing his ideas will take time. And that's what we're all saying. That this group are learning his ideas, his new movements, responsibilities, and it's a different way of playing for some of them. Some of them know about the back 3. Diamande's played that a lot. The new wing back coming in, he'll have played that. There's missing pieces to the puzzle at the moment. There was no Gibbs White last night. I thought Amari Hutchinson off the bench was lively. It was good to see him back in a Forest shirt. He's had a little bit of a knock lately, but he's back. Callum Hudson-Odoi come off. He looked lively as well. He's coming back from a long-term injury. Murillo came on. Lovely threaded through ball again. He stepped into midfield. We're going to see more of that. We know he's got the ability. There are some little positives there that we've got to try and take. And listen, guys, again, I make no apology for trying to put a positive spin on where we're at because we are in a good place. We've got a really good manager. just got to make sure that we don't put too much pressure on the club and let them get on with it and just support them properly. But can we already see what Oliver Glasner is trying to build? You know, what looks like the biggest problem he needs to solve? How much of what we're seeing is simply the inevitable plan of changing systems? There's a lot of questions in there. And Richard's been giving this a lot of thought when it comes to Oliver Glasner and the teams he's managed previously. So here comes something on screen. And Richard, you've got a little bit of a theory as to perhaps why does it seemingly take so long for Glasner's teams to adapt and thrive? That's the question to you, Richard. And I want the other guys to chip in as well. You know, what is it about his philosophy that maybe creates a slower acclimation?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of looked at it, not to get too metaphorical and conceptual here, but I looked at it in terms of like, imagine it like an orchestra, right? So when I looked at what he was saying, and I took the transcripts from multiple interviews he's done, right, at previous situations, whether it be within Germany and Austria, and then coupled with what he's talked about since coming to Palace, right? And so imagine it and described in this way, right? A symphony works because everyone knows their role, when to come in, when to support, when to kind of back off and stay quiet, and when to and then how they're all, each individual parts fits the whole, right? So no single musician is trying to dominate. The beauty and impact comes from coordination. So when you're asked to do that, and you're putting your mind in a different headspace and a different way of thinking through the way that you manage space, the way that you take angles on certain things, the way that you kind of create combinations, and the way that, say, like your forward rotation occurs in conjunction with those wing backs, because it is a different setup than what we've been used to with that back four. When you have players like Ola and Nico, which you saw last night, they were camped at the middle of the park. Where were they camped at the big in the previous match? More towards the back in our final third, because that's their natural tendency, because that's what they've done as part of a back four. So it's weeding out some of those natural tendencies, so in order for the coordination, as I just mentioned, to all make sense. So there's a lot of elements to this that I think, and I say, he's challenging them. And here's the statement that I really love. Glasner talks constantly about creating an environment where players don't have to think. They know the music so well that they can perform it instinctively. That's what an orchestra does. The musicians aren't reading every note consciously during every single performance. They're expressing something they've rehearsed until it becomes second nature. That's why I say it's got to take time. I mean, I know we keep referencing that and keep repeating it, but if you look at what's on screen right now, this is just a look back at what he's done at Reed, at Lask, at Wolfsburg, at Frankfurt, and at Palace. These are where he's operated as a head coach and as a manager in the recent past. At Reed, which was one of his first stops, he started out in his first 10 matches, 0.9 points per game, so under a point a game. His 11th match to the end of the season, 1.36. And I think he finished 7th in that season. So that's one example. It's a points per game change of about half a point per game uptick. If you then fast forward to Frankfurt, 0.9 in the first 1 through 10 matches in that league, in the Bundesliga. And then in the 11th match to the end, he had a differential, a points per game average increase of 0.55. Similarly at Palace, he only had 13 matches in the 23-24 season. He came in the last 13 matches of the season. He was at 1.5 points per game in the first match to the 10th match, and then it was 3 points per game in the last the 11th match to the end. Right, so only about 3 matches. That's a 1.5 points per game differential. Palace last season, 24-25, 0.7. Because he had some turnover in his personnel, right? He had some new people to acclimate, and that's really when Wharton hit the ground running and became Wharton, right? 0.7 points per game in the first 10 matches, 1.59 points per game from the 11th match to the end. That's almost a full point. It's getting close to a full point points per game differential, and the goal difference pairs out the same. So it's just, to me, it all speaks to a history here that we all have to take as precedent for what we should be, how we should be viewing this particular experiment that is Oliver Glasner at Nottingham Forest. So I'm not as worried because of that. I don't sit here and pine over the fact that I feel like we should have won both these matches comfortably against a team that's already established and already stable and already has things implemented. I think it'll get there. It's just going to take time, and usually it happens between the 5th match to the 10th, and certainly after the 10th match, you really see an acceleration in terms of performance levels.
You can clip that between the 5th match and the 10th match. That's what's going to happen. The soothsayer has spoken. So, it is, there's that old cliche, it's the fine margins moment. What about you, Scott, when it comes to Oliver Glasner and his previous? He's got previous at starting slowly. Do you read too much into that? Or, is there something in that data that suggests, look, it's going to come good? We know he's an elite manager. His record shows that. He's won European trophies. He's won domestic cups. We've just got to give him that patience, haven't we?
Yeah, definitely. Look, and we want to see, I guess, we want to see more personality from this Forest side. We want to see Glasner putting his print on this Forest team. But it isn't going to be a quick transition. This will take a number of games, and as Rich just sort of called out there's that sweet spot in terms of how long that this will take. We just got to be patient. It will come. It will come, and I think we just got to be patient with Glasner, patient with his methods, and it's coming. We shouldn't. We just got to keep the faith. What worries me is that the fan base will struggle to if there are more losses. They will voice that concern, and then Marinakis, who we know, our fabulous owner, he can make knee-jerk reactions. We have to keep the faith. Just be positive. It's coming. The change will come, but we've got to keep the faith, because we don't want 4 seasons. We don't want 4 managers this season again. We want to keep the faith that Glasner. He is an elite manager. Let's stick with him. Let's stick with his methods. Stick with his process.
What about you, David? When it comes to Mr. Marinakis, it's there for everyone to see that he'll pull the trigger, but I don't think he's like pulling the trigger all without giving it any thought. That's what I'm trying to say. When it came to sacking Dyche, he got the players in. He wanted to hear what they had to say. With Ange, it was clear that it was a mismatch from the start. The Nuno thing is the Nuno thing with Edu and all that. We know all about that. We know that Oliver Glasner comes available. So I kind of felt like Vitor Pereira, as you and your dad have touched on, should have been given the time to come in and start the season. But Marinakis has seen the chance to improve and upgrade, and has taken it. And I think that it shows great leadership. That's how you run a business. It's not reactionary, it's proactive. You go out there, you get the guy you want. You're not waiting for the bad things to happen. You're making the change now. Gave him the whole pre-season. So the fact that he's done that, the fact that he said, you know what, I can get Glasner in. It took a lot of convincing. Glasner has spoken about the ambition of Marinakis being the big draw. And as well, it's taking Glasner to speak to Delap to get him to come. I can imagine he's probably said to Liam Delap, listen, I understand your reservations about coming to Nottingham Forest because I had them myself. But let me tell you, this club is going places. This club has got ambition. I've got ambition, and I want you to be part of that. I can imagine that's the kind of conversation that happened. So the question I've got for you is Mr. Marinakis going to give Glasner now, honestly, all the time he needs, in spite of maybe a losing streak, in spite of being close to the bottom, in spite of media pressure and fan pressure? Is he going to say, you know what, I've got the man I wanted, I'm going to stick with him?
I think he has to do that, because if he's made the decision to, even if Vitor was, his track record suggests he's a short-term option. He's somebody that is, just an impact manager, and then it tends to fall apart like it did with Wolves. Who knows if that would have happened at Forest? So you can see why he went for Oliver Glasner. I think it's clear that the clubs wanted him for a few years. So I don't think it was, just something that to be rude to Vitor, be disrespectful or be reactionary. I think it was because we generally thought that this was the right thing to do. It would be good, better long term for us, long term success for somebody like Oliver Glasner. He's just won 2 trophies at a similar sort of level club, typically a club like Palace that don't really achieve much. And he did that with them. So I can see why most clubs would want Oliver Glasner. But I think now he has to stick by that more than anyone, because I don't know whether, anyone saw Nuno leaving like he did. And I don't really think the club knew what to do when it happened. And we turned to Ange, and that never worked. It was a big learning curve, a bit like what Glasner is, but for very different reasons. It's a big learning curve. And then we really didn't know what to do when that didn't work, and we went a bit old school with Sean Dyche, and that really felt short term. Vitor, stays the ship, but obviously the club wanted somebody that we really felt could be a long term successor and really get the club back where it was a couple of seasons ago. But like I say, I think if you're going to do that, you've really got to be confident in it, and you've got to give them the time and understand that Glasner's going to play a more maybe not complex system, but something that's going to be a bit harder to adapt to. Because Vitor and Dyche, it was fairly similar to how he played with Nuno in a way, whereas Glasner's quite different. So it's going to take longer, but he's now your fifth manager in a year. If that don't work, it's like, suddenly it's looking like really disjointed.
Where do you go from there if it's not going to work? If he's going to get shown the door so quickly, where do you go from there? I mean, we've already got a bad rep. You become laughing stock, like number one. I think it's got to be. I think it's going to work, and I think you've got to give him time. Okay, guys, listen. I want to end the pod because we've run over as we usually do. Premier Elliot was in with us earlier, and to lighten our mood, he wanted to share today's fact, and it's that in the 1930 World Cup semi-final between the USA and Argentina, the American medic accidentally chloroformed himself and had to be carried off. Apparently, he'd smashed the bottle and ended up in a bit of a sorry state. Well, let's hope that none of our medical team have similar things happen this season with them. Closing thoughts from the gang. Are you more concerned, less concerned, or exactly where you expected to be, guys, after the first couple of games? What are your closing thoughts and overriding thoughts and feelings going into the weekend? Let's start with you, Scotty.
Keep the faith, guys. We've talked around it. This is a long-term project. We've got a great manager that's in there. We're bringing players in. Keep the faith. We do. We are 2 games into the season. We just need to be positive. And just one thing, Carabao Cup. We don't need the Carabao Cup. We're not bothered with that. Leeds can have that. We won the FA Cup. Let's focus on that. League and FA Cup. That's where we need to go. We're done.
Any cup win for me would do, to be honest with you. I mean, it's a bit of a kick in the swingers when the Carabao Cup comes literally immediately as the season starts. It shouldn't be that you are looking to not get a Premier League side. I don't ever want us to go, let's have an easy tie. I always think we can beat everyone, but I wanted to win last night. What about you, David? Anything to close on?
Yeah, I am keeping the faith. I hope it can work with Glasner. I think I've been saying throughout, it's something that's going to take a while to adapt, and hopefully long term it can be, what we wanted Glasner to be, and that's bring success to the club. Stability is desperately needed. It hasn't been a good start. It is a bit concerning, but I don't think we can look at Glasner like we looked at Dyche and Ange and say he's clueless and he doesn't know what he's doing. That's just not true. But obviously, it's a big job. It's a lot of work to do. Like Glasner said himself, he's come into a club that has struggled the last few seasons, besides 1 year. So it's not going to work necessarily straight away. So yeah, it's a lot of work to do, but I'm sure if we really stick at it, we can get somewhere. So
fantastic. I'm with you. And Richard, I want to come to you, buddy, for any closing thoughts. Are we going in the right direction under this manager? Are you certain that it's going to take just a short amount of games, 5 to 10, and we'll be up and running where we want to be?
I mean, I'm just going based off what the data says and what the history has shown. I'm not trying to, data is not about feelings, right? So I'm just strictly going off the evidentiary support. But I would say this. I mean, I genuinely believe that everyone was very excited about this manager coming in because they'd seen it themselves, right? I mean, they didn't study Palace. We didn't watch Palace religiously, right? We've obviously got this weird dynamic with them now based on all that's unfolded. But at the same time, I would suggest that we all felt he was a top manager and he was being looked at by top clubs in Europe to come in. And there has to be a reason for that. And I think it's the consistency. It's what he's shown he can do. I mean, if he can turn Will Hughes into a functioning midfield, I'm pretty confident he can do that and take Sangare to another level. Nobody knew who Wharton was. Frankly, nobody really knew that much about Elliot Anderson when he came in. And yet somehow, some way, now we have nobody in midfield that can succeed. after 2 matches. I'm like, to me, that just feels very, very narrow in our thinking. No offense to anyone who's put that out there, because I respect their opinion. They may very well be right at some point. But I have a complete faith in the idea that we have to trust the process, and we have to live on the headspace of what we've already seen happen, and then believe that we have the quality to turn this around, and we have the manager to do it, and it will happen. It's just going to, hopefully that begins at Anfield with a good performance, even if we lose, but we show a little bit of a different spark, a different energy, a different execution in this particular match. But yeah, I'm fine with where we're at. I'm not happy. I'm never happy when we lose, but ultimately I do believe we're moving in the right direction with the right framework and the right structure and the right man at the helm.
Okay, thanks very much to you guys. Absolutely fantastic. If you're in the comments, been lots of you today. Thank you so much for chipping in. We've tried to get some on screen. If you can go ahead and hit the like button on this video, subscribe to the channel, give us a review wherever you're listening on a podcast, give us some feedback. We'd love to hear from you. Follow us on social media. Thank you so much for your support. And I'm going to end because yesterday we lost a legend, and that is, of course, the wonderful Dolly Parton. Now, she was famous for saying quite a few things in her career. She was an inspiration. One thing she said that I found quite funny was, "It's a good thing I was born a girl, otherwise I'd be a drag queen." I thought that was quite humorous because it showed that she had, she didn't take herself sometimes too seriously. But she also said things like, "The way I see it, if you want the rainbow, you've got to put up with the rain." Let's think about that for a moment, guys. We cannot direct the wind, she said. We can adjust the sails. Again, it's all about the change. It's all about everything we're going through. And she says, "I never tried quitting, and I never quit trying." And that's what this team have to show us. One final quote from Dolly that is truly relevant to us. She said, "Storms make trees take deeper roots." Well, we are Nottingham Forest. We are the trees of the Premier League. And Stu's film sums up how deep those roots go. And when we pull together and when we come together, it might be change that's happening, but get on board. You're going to go in the right direction. You know, as I said, and as she says, if you want the rainbow, you've got to put up with the rain. Come on, you Reds.